What's really going on inside Russia? The headlines tell one story, but the real drama is happening behind the closed doors of the Kremlin and in the private jets of Russia's super-rich. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating and critical development: the great oligarch exodus. Why are the billionaires who once propped up Putin's regime now running for the hills? This isn't just about money. It's about a fundamental crack appearing in the very foundation of Putin's power. Stick around, because this story reveals why Putin's grip on Russia might be slipping faster than anyone realizes. For decades, the deal was simple. Russian oligarchs got to keep their immense wealth, and in return, they offered unwavering loyalty to Vladimir Putin. They were the financial pillars of his regime, a powerful circle of elites who owed their fortunes to their connection to the Kremlin. But that unspoken contract is now in tatters. The sight of oligarchs fleeing Russia is more than just a travel advisory. It's a massive vote of no confidence in Putin's leadership. These aren't just any citizens. These are the insiders, the people with the most to lose. And their departure sends a powerful signal that the ship is sinking and they want off. Think about it from their perspective. These wealthy elites build their empires on a certain kind of stability. The stability that Putin promised. They thrived in a system where the rules, while perhaps not fair, were at least predictable. They knew who to pay, who to please, and how to protect their assets. But Putin's recent actions have thrown all of that into chaos. The predictability is gone, replaced by a volatile and uncertain future. Their once cozy alliance with the regime has become a liability. They're looking at their fortunes, their families, and their futures. And they're starting to ask a very dangerous question. Is sticking with Putin still worth it? For a growing number, the answer is a resounding no. This isn't just a quiet retreat. We're seeing prominent figures, people who were once the face of Russian business, making very public moves to distance themselves from the Kremlin. They're relocating their families, moving their assets, and in some cases, even renouncing their Russian citizenship. People like Oleg Tinkov, the founder of a major digital bank, have openly criticized the conflict and sold their Russian assets. Others, like Mikhail Fridman, have found themselves trapped between Western sanctions and Kremlin pressure. These are not minor players. Their actions are creating a domino effect, making other elites question their own positions. It's a classic prisoner's dilemma. If everyone stays loyal, they might weather the storm. But the moment some start to break ranks and flee, staying behind becomes the riskiest move of all. Now, you might think Putin isn't bothered by a few disgruntled billionaires. But the criticism isn't just coming from the super-rich. A new and unexpected source of dissent is bubbling up from within his own power base: military bloggers. These are fiercely nationalistic, pro-military figures who have huge followings on platforms like Telegram. For a long time, they were some of Putin's most ardent cheerleaders. But now, they've become some of his most vocal critics. They aren't criticizing the war itself. They're criticizing how it's being managed. They see incompetence, poor strategy, and logistical failures, and they're not afraid to say it. When these influential military bloggers start pointing out failures on the battlefield, it directly undermines the Kremlin's carefully crafted narrative of strength and success. They're providing real-time, unfiltered information to millions of Russians, creating a version of events that often contradict the official state media. This is incredibly dangerous for Putin because it erodes his credibility with the very people who should be his strongest supporters, the patriotic, pro-military segment of the population. He's now in a tricky position. If he cracks down on them, he risks alienating a key part of his base. But if he lets them continue, their criticism chips away at his authority and the perception of his competence as a commander-in-chief. Let's talk about the elephant in the room: sanctions. Western sanctions are hitting the oligarchs exactly where it hurts their wallets. We're talking frozen assets, seized yachts, travel bans, and being cut off from the global financial system. The luxury lifestyles they once flaunted in London, New York, and the south of France have evaporated overnight. Their wealth, which was once their source of power and influence, is now a vulnerability. These sanctions were designed not just to punish, but to apply pressure, to make the cost of supporting the Kremlin unbearably high. And it appears to be working. The sanctions are creating a clear divide. Oligarchs are being forced to choose between their loyalty to Putin and their access to their global wealth. For many, this isn't a difficult choice. Their fortunes weren't just stored in Russia. They were deeply integrated into the Western economy. Their kids went to schools in Switzerland. They owned property in London, and their money was managed by banks in New York. The sanctions have effectively cut them off from their own lives. This financial strangulation does more than just inconvenience them. It fundamentally weakens their ability to support the regime, even if they wanted to. Their financial power, once a tool for Putin, is being neutralized, and their loyalty is being tested like never before. So, what happens when a group of incredibly wealthy, powerful, and now very unhappy people feel cornered? This is where things get really interesting. The growing discontent among the oligarchs isn't just about them saving their own skins. It carries the seed of a potential rebellion. Now, we're not necessarily talking about a dramatic coup in the dead of night. It's more likely to be a quieter, more insidious form of resistance. It could manifest as a capital strike, a refusal to invest further in the Russian economy. It could mean quietly funding opposition movements or leaking sensitive information to Western intelligence agencies. Historically, the oligarchs have been kept in line because their power was entirely dependent on Putin's blessing. But as their international wealth gets frozen and their domestic businesses suffer, that dynamic changes. They have less to lose by defying the Kremlin because, in their eyes, much has already been lost. A cornered animal is a dangerous one, and a cornered billionaire, stripped of their assets and influence, is a potent force for instability. The crucial question is whether their individual discontent can coalesce into a collective movement. If even a small but influential group of oligarchs decides to actively work against the regime, it could create a significant internal threat that Putin has never faced before. This leads to the final and perhaps most important point. The political power of the oligarchs as a class is diminishing, and, paradoxically, this eroding Putin's own influence. In the past, Putin's power was built on his ability to act as the ultimate arbiter among competing clans of oligarchs. He could reward loyalty and punish dissent, keeping everyone in a delicate balance that ensured his position at the top. He was the master puppeteer, and they were his willing, or at least compliant, puppets. But that entire system is breaking down. As the oligarchs' wealth and global influence are curtailed by sanctions, their importance to Putin's power structure decreases. They are no longer the mighty kingmakers they once were. At the same time, a new power center is emerging. The Siloviki, the hardliners from the military and security services. These are the men who have Putin's ear now, the ones pushing for a more aggressive stance. As Putin leans more heavily on this hawkish faction, he alienates the business elites, further fragmenting his own power base. He is trading the oligarchs' financial power for the military's coercive power. This shift makes his regime more brittle, more reliant on force, and less resilient to economic and political shocks. In essence, Putin is sawing off the branch he's sitting on. By sidelining the oligarchs who helped him build his system, he is losing a critical lever of control. His power is becoming less about balancing interests and more about raw coercion, which is a much harder and more exhausting way to rule. The fleeing oligarchs, the critical military bloggers, the biting sanctions, they are all symptoms of the same underlying disease, a crisis of confidence in Putin's leadership. The very foundations of his two-decade rule are being shaken, not just by external enemies, but by the disillusionment of his closest allies. The great oligarch exodus is more than just a story about rich men running away. It's a harbinger of a far greater instability to come. Thank you so much for watching. This is a complex and evolving situation, and we'll be keeping a close eye on it. What do you think? Is this the beginning of the end for Putin's current power structure, or is it just a temporary setback? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this analysis insightful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories shaping our world. See you next time.